I have months that are just gone. I've been listening to the logs, reading the research, playing catch-up.
You spent 3 years of your life making it possible, putting what they can do into us. You've just forgotten.
I didn't agree to any of this, all right? That Morgan is not me. I would never...
Even if we're dead, it won't be over. Even if we're dead, it won't be over.
What is a neuromod? It is the motor that drives Prey's profound questions. What if you could directly modify your brain to instantly learn new skills? What if someone else could directly modify your brain as well? Would you still be yourself? What if an incurable medical condition prevented a portion of humans from ever interfacing with this technology? What if a soulless megacorp could erase your memory at will? Would you still use them if each neuromod was paid for in human blood? I think Prey's answers to each of them are going to be uncomfortable. Prey, not to be confused with Prey, is among that echelon of games that I cannot pick a favorite out of, nor can I put any other game higher than that. I could be showering it in praises for days, due to the complexity of its gameplay mechanisms, the attention to detail in its environments, or the brooding and atmospheric soundscape from who else but Mick Gordon. However, what I'm here to tell you about is the layered, unclear, and very postmodern narrative and themes. By the end of this journey, a cosmic race of amorphous alien matter, which literally doesn't see humans as living beings, will seem like the least of your problems. It's still a problem you're going to have to fight through to complete the game. It turns out this can teach us things we might not want to know about humanity and the universe.
The people that come after us will be smarter, stronger, immortal. They can judge us if they want, but they'll know they exist because of the things we did.
Before we proceed, naturally, I have to warn you of spoilers. I also want to sincerely recommend this game if you are at all a fan of immersive sims, or other systems-driven games. Seriously, stop watching the video if this game at all seems like your thing and play it. Even in the very start, you will see things that can't be forgotten. This game is the only game I wish I could wipe my memory clean of and play for the first time again. So don't rob yourself of your first time. You wake up in your apartment in the year 2032.
Good morning, Morgan. Today is Monday, March 15th, 2032.
Hey, Morgan, wake up. You're burning daylight. You sent the helicopter to pick you up. It's just a few tests. Don't forget to wear your suit. See you soon. Oh, listen, really great you decided to come on board. We're gonna shake things up, Morgan. Like old times.
This guy is Alex Yu, and we play as their sibling, Morgan Yu, president and vice president, respectively, of a company called TranStar. While technically our superior, in practice we are very much equals and treated as such. TranStar is a science and tech giant who owns Talos 1, a space station orbiting the moon, aboard which many discoveries and inventions were made. Chief among them, the Neuromod, TranStar's flagship product. This little gem is able to interface with and rewrite parts of your brain, instantly giving you new skills and abilities. Said proficiencies are derived by scanning the brains of great minds and then replicating similar structures inside of others. The context of this intro is that Alex works aboard Talos 1, overseeing the research and health of the station. This is the day Morgan decided to join their brother in the abyss of space, and are preparing for the change. A helicopter has been sent to fetch us, so that we can run some important tests. This character's gender is left up to you to decide, and the surname is not subtle about what the game is doing. Morgan Yu is an avatar of you, and a silent protagonist at that. For the most part, this is executed fairly well, and doesn't ruin immersion. But there are a few moments where the lack of speech is awkward and jarring. The phone-looking device that Alex called us on is a transcribe. It's a little PDA that every TranStar employee has, used to store information, communicate, and record data. For the purposes of gameplay, it also keeps track of objectives, your inventory, status effects, and such. Not much is known of the board of directors of TranStar, but we do know William and Catherine Yu, our parents, are important members of it, and William especially appears to command a lot of power. There's a few things we can learn about Morgan in their apartment. The game lets us read short excerpts from some books, which are mostly unrelated to topics in the game, but there are some we can glean a bit of backstory from. On a workbench, some scattered tools and materials, along with a metal frame, show us that Morgan is an engineering mind. This frame is part of a machine called an operator. In this game, operators are flying robots, which perform a variety of tasks, like medical care, maintenance work, or overseeing experiments in a laboratory. A book on speech synthesis is a glimpse into a technology that is necessary for them to work, and that will play a major role later. There's a book about cooking with wok, and the only reason I'm mentioning it is because my sides were gone after seeing how pretentious and dramatic it was. Cooking with a well-seasoned wok can be a sublime, almost spiritual experience. A study that found some telepathic-like abilities in humans, written by Dr. Dio Igwe, a character in the game we will meet. A bottle of sparkling wine and a note from Alex that just says, "Congrats," probably for being cleared to work on Talos 1. The password to Morgan's workstation is F-Paradox, which stands for Fermi Paradox, and the painting above is actually inspired by it as well. The pop-sci rundown of what that is that even by very conservative estimates of how many planets there are within our galaxy and how rare life should be, and how many of these life forms could evolve intelligence and advanced communication methods, the chances that we should have picked up on some of their activity, whether that be radio transmissions, probes, or heat signatures, seem to be fairly high. And yet we haven't. One of the emails is from Alex, telling Morgan to install a neuromod, which will apparently be important for the upcoming tests. For reasons that will become clear soon, we know that this is the first neuromod Morgan has ever received. Putting on our suit and heading outside, we see Patricia Varma performing some maintenance work, fixing some water pressure issues. As per the screen, all the other doors are locked, and we take an elevator to the helipad on the roof, for one of the coolest title drops in a game I've ever seen, all set to the fantastic noises of Mick Gordon.
Ms. Yu, please make yourself comfortable and we'll be on our way. TranStar facility is just a short hop. 78 degrees, clear skies all the way. That's a nice view on the bay there. Here we are, Ms. Yu. Mind the glass on the way out. Good luck to you.
Anyway, once the helicopter sits down, we come face to face with Alex and a security guard. A bit of chit-chat later, we are let into the testing chambers.
Good morning, Morgan. I'm Dr. Bellamy. Looks like we have some tests to run through today.
the procedure being overseen by Sylvan Bellamy, Lucia Jimenez, and Marco Simmons. The first test requires us to quickly remove some boxes from the red circle. The second one has us hide in an empty room with nothing but a chair, and the third asks us to leap over a small barrier to press another button. Those are the tests. Those are the tests that you absolutely had to undergo before going to orbit, and for which they send a chopper specifically to get you. Regardless of your performance, the dialogue between the researchers indicates something isn't going as they planned.
I'm sorry, can someone please explain to me what's happening? Simmons?
I installed exactly what Tina brought down.
Did you double check?
Speaker's still on.
Both Bellamy and Alex insist on you solving the test in the most natural, intuitive way possible. The former actually interrogates Simmons on if he installed the correct something. It's clear you were going to be testing neuromods, but apparently you did not get what you were supposed to. Gameplay-wise, these tests are a very diegetic way of teaching the player basic mechanics without breaking character. On top of that, everyone involved in this test is very impatient with you. What is your problem, dude?
Whenever you're ready, Morgan.
Oh, fuck off.
Can someone get me a cup of coffee? I would appreciate it. Thank you.
In the final chamber, we are asked to sit down in front of a computer. We must go through a single choice questionnaire monitoring some personality traits. Go to a familiar place or try something new. You have been sentenced to death. How do you feel? Then a series of variations on the trolley problem. First, the usual: leave 5 people to die to a trolley crash, or kill 1 to save the others. Push a fat man to stop the trolley or not. Jump in front of the trolley to stop it or not. It's not immediately obvious, but many of the story decisions you will be making in the game are variations on the trolley problem themselves. The trolley problem in general is more complicated than many people know. It's not just a simple question of pulling the lever or not, there's consequences to it. I believe most people would pull the lever to redirect the trolley and kill 1 person instead of leaving 5 to die. But if that's the case, why don't we dissect a healthy person to transplant their organs and save 5 gravely wounded or sick patients? Despite the 2 scenarios having near identical consequences, the latter feels like something unacceptable to do. For many of the difficult decisions in this game, I found myself picking strangely inconsistent options, just because they felt like the only acceptable solution.
Well done. Well done. We're nearly through it. For this next part, I'm going to display an image. I want you to take a good look at it. In a moment, I'm going to ask you what... is my coffee? It's empty.
Oh my god!
Alex,
Simmons, what's going on?
we have a problem.
What about Morgan?
She's alive, sedated.
Clean it up. I'm on my way.
Good morning, Morgan. Today is Monday, March 15th, 2032.
After this incident, we wake up on a Monday. For the 2nd day in a row, Alex doesn't call us, and the chopper doesn't come. The wine and note are in a different position. The workstation emails are just a bunch of alarm messages spammed 6 times in a row from someone called January. The ambience is deafeningly anxious. Stepping outside, Patricia is dead, and her head is bloated and decaying, just like what happened to Bellamy when the creature attacked him.
Hello, Morgan. It's time we spoke. My code name is January. You're not dreaming. What happened yesterday was real. If you want to know what's going on, first, you need to get out of your apartment building. You're not safe.
This January character tells us to escape the apartment, but the lift is just gone. The corridor is a dead end. This leaves only one option: the window. This is the moment that hooked many players, including myself, on this game. Morgan has been living in a simulation for an unknown amount of time, reliving the same day over and over again. But how was this possible? Neuromods have a massive flaw. The neural structures formed as a result of the application are completely indistinguishable from those that come from real experience. As a result, there is no way to remove a neuromod without a total recall, recreating the brain in the state it was in when the neuromod was first applied, including the memories. While this isn't something stated in the game, given that this kind of technology exists in the world of Prey, to directly modify people's brains in constructive or destructive ways, it's not a stretch to say that it is entirely possible to revert people's memories, even if they never had a neuromod in the first place. Morgan's room is fake, his actions were being observed and written down, the sounds of the chopper and Alex's phone call were pre-recorded. The lab is now completely empty, which is why the call didn't come through. There was nobody there to activate it. The apartment building is a contraption of moving fake walls that arrange themselves to create different environments. The elevator rides never happened either. The surroundings just moved into a different configuration. The pilot's voice is glitching out, indicating he was not a real person either. All of this was enabled by an incredible technology, the Looking Glass. No, not that Looking Glass. A screen projecting a virtual scene that somehow takes into account the position of the viewer and applies perspective as well as parallax, along with their movement, giving the illusion you're looking at a real environment behind the glass, rather than a two-dimensional display. What I love about Prey is an attention to detail unmatched by other games. You can notice several clues. All of this was fake during this intro sequence. The most well-known are the scuff marks on the floor created by the constant movement of the walls. There is a particular mark on the floor that persists in exactly the same location before and after the elevator ride, indicating it never moved. On the helipad, you can try throwing a prop out of the area and it will bounce off an invisible wall. On the helicopter ride, near the start, there is a momentary glitch in the Looking Glass routine and the scene disappears. Some people believe this is another clue, but I'm not so sure myself, and I'm split on if this is intentional or an actual bug in the game's scripted event. Of course, the chopper never moved anywhere, and the windows were a looking glass too. My favorite detail is that if you stand at a very particular spot in the test chambers, you can see in the background a sign that says Simulation Labs. Within the simulation labs themselves, we can glean a significant amount of information about the context for all of this. For one, there is a debrief room to which Morgan was normally taken to after the tests to be caught up and informed of the fact that they was all a ruse. The reason for them in the first place was that Morgan volunteered to be a test subject for neuromods. However, they chose, along with Alex, that the experiments must take place on a mind unmodified, and since Morgan installed neuromods all the way back in 2032, that's the place their memory goes back to. That's a time span of 3 years erased, by the way. The game actually takes place in February 2035. But how did Morgan remember the previous day? Well, I'm sorry to say, but I believe this to be the only major plot hole of the game. January later claims that they somehow swapped out the neuromods to be tested that time for blanks, but that doesn't really explain anything. Those blanks were still applied long after the first neuromods Morgan has ever taken, so removing everything from after this time should still reset their memory. I mean, this is exactly the reason why the simulation is set all the way back then. No matter what you do with your brain after installing a neuromod, once you remove it, the memory goes right back. Inside of this debrief room is also the device used to remove neuromods. The procedure is called an aptoregressive neurotomy. The wrench you pick up from Patricia is your first weapon, but you can quickly get another. Atop this data tower, inside the debrief room, there is a briefcase, which actually has some major story significance we'll get to later. Inside, among other items, is the Disruptor stun gun, and it's an indispensable little thing. It incapacitates organic enemies, while also heavily damaging robotic ones. But what enemies? In the testing facility we get a few answers.
Typhon cacoplasmus. Everyone calls them mimics. Be careful what you pick up.
There's an outbreak of an alien race called Typhon. The most basic type is the mimic, which can transform and imitate physical props in the environment, and this one chooses to disguise itself as the chair we were supposed to hide behind. You see, the tests were experiments of Typhon-based neuromods, that is, neuromods which give you abilities of the Typhon organisms. Abilities such as the mimicry you were expected to perform in this room to hide. In the first room, you were to use an ability called Kinetic Blast to violently remove the boxes from the circle, and in the third, Remote Manipulation to, well, remotely manipulate the button from beyond the obstruction. This is why the characters are telling you to go with your gut. You're not supposed to actually know you have these paranormal skills. However, Morgan did consent to these tests in general, though not to be kept there indefinitely, without any debriefs. They're not to be treated like a rat in a cage after all. In rooms further along, we see the scientists keeping track of what Morgan did in each chamber, with the final round being a resounding failure on all fronts, because the neuromods were swapped out for blank ones, and there's a few emails from Simmons indicating he tried to get to the bottom of this. The gameplay design of the Mimic is actually genius. Clearly a tremendous amount of time has gone into creating the environments in the game. They feel so densely packed with detail and stories to tell that giving you a reason to pay close attention to said environment in the form of an enemy that disguises itself as part of it, including items you can pick up, elevates the game into something truly special. Of course, this is because you can often tell when an object shouldn't be there, like when there's two chairs next to a workstation that only hosts one person. Infuriatingly, despite the workstations actually tracking an in-game time, the emails and voice logs do not let us read the date and time off of when they were made. This makes piecing together a timeline of events orders of magnitude harder. There is one more email exchange in this area of particular note. It turns out memory loss is not the only side effect of removing neuromods. The brain of the person is apparently reverted to exactly the state it was in before, but despite this, a phenomenon called personality drift occurs. This means their personality, temperament, and attitude slowly shift across the cycles, which is what the researchers noticed in Morgan, and not much was being done about it aside from the final chamber, with the questionnaire being used to monitor and track the changes. All of this is why neuromod technology is humanity's worst nightmares come true. Ever applying a neuromod is an admission that you are a slave to the wet sack of guts you call your body, and yet something more is at play here. Something that seems to exceed our plane of existence. Losing entire chunks of your life at the behest of someone else is already something that many would consider an unacceptable compromise, or a violation of some intrinsic human sovereignty. The player's role in this story is perfect, as they also will not remember the interim 3 years. They will be just as confused as Morgan upon breaking out of the simulation, and the fact that this character is canonically a loose cannon in terms of their personality due to the drift also means no choice you make in-game is out of character. Prey is not just asking Morgan, it's asking the player themselves a very important question. Let's say you chose to undergo some medical procedure. Someone with malicious intent could remove most of your memories and revert you, let's say, 20 years back. You'd be left in a house you don't recognize, with people you don't love, in a life completely foreign to you. You'd be practically robbed of 20 years worth of time, and also with a capacity to enjoy what you've got. Given all of this information, given that the human brain and personality can be artificially altered to remove and possibly even create fake memories, and given that some inexplicable mechanism also has a part to play in the decisions you make, then who are you? We have to get through this decontamination chamber to progress out of the simulation labs. The scripted event shows us exactly how the Typhon multiply, requiring the death of a human being. Mimics specifically change the victim's complexion into a bloated mess, like they've been drowned. The same thing happened to Bellamy, and if a corpse looks like this, it has unambiguously been killed by a mimic. Though they don't attack us in the same way, so this also doesn't necessarily mean a normal corpse has not been killed by a mimic. There's an office area beyond, where we see the scientists working here, keeping track of the test results, and also deciding how to test the remote manipulation skill before settling on the button. On Jovan Gavrilovich's workstation, the person we just witnessed the death of, we see he were responsible for preparing the test chambers, and an urgent email tells him to track down Bellamy's body, as he has apparently taken some classified data outside of the research department, starting our first side quest. I really like how the game responds to what you're doing, as it is an immersive sim after all. One neat little detail here is that on Bellamy's workstation in his office, you can see an email with the questionnaire results you have picked. There's many things the game itself is keeping track of in the shadows, but we'll have to progress to find out more.
That was a phantom. Typhon Anthrophantasmus. Keep moving.
Making our way further, we turn a corner to find Prey's staple weapon, the glue cannon. It fires a stream of... well... I mean that one's relatable. Hey baby, they call me a glue cannon because I ceaselessly discharge white sticky stuff that immobilizes my enemies and lets me spank their asses with a wrench until they bend over for me, preferably over a railing and to their deaths. Also, it hardens and stiffens into a crusty layer that lets me climb on top of things and access places humans were never meant to. So yeah, this is probably the most fun weapon in the game, and also one of the most creative weapons in gaming as a whole, in my opinion. Freezing enemies still is already a cool functionality. Making them take additional damage while disabled is another, and on top of that you can also use it to climb and access hidden areas. You've probably noticed that the crosshair in this game is not centered on your screen. This is a trick game devs use to get you to look up, at least in theory. Anyway, the level design in this game is vertical as fuck. Unless you're in a tiny metal corridor, there's always something above you. The glue cannon is your primary method of ascension in this game, but we will soon get a propulsion system that lets us glide down safely from great heights, and can even be upgraded to give a vertical boost as well. Another cool trick is that there is going to be some floating enemies we find later in the game, which can be frozen using glue to make them tumble down and take massive chunks of fall damage, which is probably the most efficient way to deal with them. The weapon is picked up off of Veer Singh, who spilled excess white stuff all over the place, but has successfully encrusted at least this one mimic to show us how it's done. This upcoming room is the first major test of our gameplay awareness and mechanics proficiency. No less than 4 or 5 mimics are hidden or patrolling this area, and simply walking in will result in getting swarmed. You have to be careful to pick your battles and try to eliminate them one by one, especially since you now have a potent tool for efficiently incapacitating them. The room in which we saw the Phantom is called a skill recorder, and there's a grand piano inside along with a treadmill, a ping pong table, and weights. It's where, well, people's skills are being recorded to use in neuromods, and one of the last people to be analyzed was clearly a pianist. This pianist is called Gustav Leitner, who has cancer and so wanted to get scanned. Dio Igwe will be sure to not shut up about him. This is why this foyer area looks so nice. It represents the division and the company as a whole for the famous guests of great aptitudes that are giving their gifts to humanity, along with some mysterious volunteers whose quarters are located on the upper floor. You can get up there with the glue gun or by repairing a grav shaft. Arcanes take on ladders that are actually intuitive to use and won't throw you off it randomly. However, for that you would have to learn to repair in the first place, and that's where neuromods come in. For the first time we get to see one up close and how they are installed. You don't actually have to get a skill then and there. You can, and there is even an achievement for beating the entire game without installing any neuromod abilities. It's not recommended, nor is it particularly fun, as these skills are half of what makes the game so rich and diverse. Most of them can be broadly categorized as either utility, combat, or resource efficiency and gathering. For now, we have access to the 3 human skill trees. Scientist includes hacking, which lets you get through workstation keypad and safe security measures. Skills that increase healing efficiency, and necropsy, which lets you harvest additional organs from that typhon. Engineer includes leverage, which lets you pick up heavy objects and throw them with increasing force to be used as makeshift weapons. Repair lets you fix devices of various complexities. Gunsmith increases the limit as to how far you can upgrade security weapons, which includes the pistol, shotgun, and stun gun. Suit modification increases your inventory space and suit chipset slots. Dismantle allows to break down gear such as weapons into spare parts and to collect spare parts from destroyed operators. There's also a skill to increase recycler yields. Lab Tech allows for further upgrading of the experimental weapons, Glue Cannon and Q-Beam, and there's a set of abilities to boost the capabilities of the basic range too. The security tree focuses on health and stamina capacities, blanket upgrades to security weapon damage, speed upgrades to everything you do, as well as helping you stay stealthy and improving sneak attacks. Combat focus is the most unique one here, as it slows down time on demand, while higher levels also increase your damage, reduce stamina costs, and even decrease the slow effect on you specifically while it's active. I love how in this game the weapons I use the most are the stun gun and the glue gun, which aren't even intended to deal direct damage. This game is in first person and it has guns, but it's not a first person shooter in the traditional sense, nor is it even really a conventional action game. It's not a Doom or Elden Ring. The enemies are fast and their attacks often come out with little warning, and you don't have many ways to avoid them if you're already their target. That's why a lot of the fighting in this game revolves around planning a way to avoid direct confrontation in the first place. Even if you want to kill every single enemy, that's fine, you just have to have a plan. Figure out a way to remove the threat before it becomes one. 2 of your weapons are designed to disable enemies, but you can even spec into using your wrench to knock them over for a good while. Consumables like nullwave devices disable many of the more threatening enemy abilities, and most of my early game in Prey is often spent carrying these portable turrets around and drawing the aggro of enemies while those shoot them in the back. For this playthrough that most of the gameplay you'll be seeing of now, I've spec'd into an engineer and melee type of character, using repair and hacking to get and investigate everything I can and to keep turrets functioning. Turrets are not a particularly effective thing to build around, as they often just die on their own when you travel between areas, and they are very flimsy anyways, so it's a drain on your spare parts supply. But it is fun. I upgraded my wrench and sneak attacks as well, and got all the leverage possible. Leverage is another skill that isn't particularly utilitarian, as blockades can be removed in other ways without the need to spend neuromods. But what is not commonly known is that the more leverage you have, the harder you can throw heavy objects to crush your enemies. Look me straight in the eyes and tell me this doesn't look fun. Actually, don't tell me it doesn't look fun, because you'd be lying. Before we get back to lore talk, let me gush a bit more about the things I love in this game. I've seen people criticize the enemy visual design for being boring. And yeah, sure, if you just take a flat screenshot, the enemies in this game are mostly just black splotches, which does look very boring. But that's not all there is to them. I mean, we've seen the mimics, for example. They twist and contort in physically impossible ways, and their bodies shimmer as if there was something moving beneath the surface. Phantoms will make nearby lights flicker and spark before you can even see them. You can also spot traces of this glitchy effect on many Typhon, and they will sometimes even play sounds after they're dead. They always give me the impression of something that's barely contained by the game, and as if they were about to break through to reality any second, and I love it. Anyway, before we leave this zone, there's a conference room with corpse of Robert Gage and our first salvaged transcribe. Always they hold at least one log of an audio call between 2 or more people, and these calls also sometimes transmit codes and passwords directly to your transcribe, without the need for anyone to speak them out loud. This one is just your standard horror game fare, where Robert calls Alice Aiken for help because he can't get out of the labs, while she talks about an evacuation and urges him to come. It ends with this, indicating Robert was probably killed by the phantom we've seen stalking this area.
Robert?
Shh. Someone's coming.
This marks the end for the content we can access so far in the Neuromod division. I was going to include the next area in this video as well, but I've actually found there is a sizable amount of things to cover, enough to make an entirely separate video. While we don't uncover anything as disturbing as neuromods themselves there, we do find what our purpose is supposed to be, along with learning some preliminary information on several fairly important side characters. Thanks for watching. Hey guys, I hope you liked the video. If you do, I would really appreciate if you hit like and subscribe. I want to get monetized, which would help me spend more time and effort making these videos. So if you want to see that, you know what to do. Thank you, bye bye.